The moon was dead and gray, walked across its dusty surface, his heavy boots leaving deep prints behind him. He was far from Earth, far from home. The year was 2247, and humanity had finally reached the distant stars. But out here, they were not alone. Was a lieutenant commander in the Navy SEALs. He had seen combat on Earth, in places most people only heard about on the news. He was good at his job, very good. That was why they sent him on this mission, leading a small team to investigate an alien structure they had found on this forgotten moon. Behind him walked two others. Corporal Myra Song carried the heavy equipment, her steps careful and measured. Sergeant Jun Park scanned everything with his instruments, looking for threats. They were a good team. They trusted each other. The structure ahead looked ancient. Tall walls of dark metal rose from the ground, covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. Had seen many things in his career, but nothing like this. His radio crackled with static. "Command, this is Reaper 1, said into his helmet mic. "We're approaching the target structure. No signs of life yet." "Copy that, Reaper 1, came the distant voice from the ship orbiting above. "Proceed with caution." Reaper, that was his. He had earned it years ago after a mission that went bad. When everyone else wanted to run, stayed and fought. He completed the mission alone against impossible odds. After that, they started calling him Reaper. Death himself. The name stuck. They entered the structure through a massive doorway. Inside, the air was cold and thin. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that stretched in every direction. The walls were smooth, almost organic looking. Jun's scanner beeped rapidly. "Sir, I'm getting strange readings," Jun said. "Energy signatures. Something is active down here." Nodded. "Stay sharp. Myra, cover our 6." They moved deeper into the structure. Every instinct had screamed at him that something was wrong. He had learned to trust his instincts. They had kept him alive through 20 years of combat, but orders were orders. They needed to know what this place was. The attack came without warning. The corridor exploded with light. Plasma bolts tore through the air, superheated energy that melted metal and stone. Jun went down first, his scream cut short as a bolt punched through his chest. Myra turned to fire back, but 3 bolts hit her at once. She fell without a sound. Dove behind a pillar, his weapon already firing. Years of training took over. His mind became calm, focused. He could see them now, their attackers. Tall creatures in dark armor carrying weapons that hummed with power. Aliens, they called themselves. Humanity had made first contact with them only months ago. The meeting had not gone well. The thought humans were weak, small, primitive. They were about to learn different. His rifle barked, sending rounds downrange with perfect accuracy. The first fell with a hole between his eyes. The second stumbled back, armor cracked. Moved, never staying in one place, always firing. His enhanced his strength and speed, but it was his skill that made the difference. He killed 5 more before they started to retreat and regroup. He killed another 3 as they tried to flank him. The corridor became a killing ground and was the Reaper, harvesting his crop. But they kept coming. More and more of them fell back, fighting room by room. His ammunition counter dropped steadily. 17. He had killed 17 of them, but his suit was failing, damaged by too many hits. His left arm went numb. His helmet display flickered and died. The last soldier rushed him in close combat, dropped his empty rifle and met him with his knife. They fought hand to hand, brutal and fast. He always won. But when he tried to stand, his legs wouldn't work. His suit had finally given out. They surrounded him, a dozen armored pointing weapons at his head, waited for the end. He had killed enough of them that they would want revenge. He hoped it would be quick. But they didn't shoot. Instead, they bound his hands and dragged him away. Understood then. They wanted him alive. They wanted information. He almost laughed. They would get nothing from him. He had been trained to resist interrogation. He would die before he betrayed humanity. They brought him to their ship. It was massive, dark, and angular, like a knife cutting through space. They threw him in a cell and removed his damaged armor. One of them, an officer by his markings, stood watching through the energy barrier that served as a door. This studied with dark, intelligent eyes. He held something in his hand. His uniform patch, the one from his shoulder, a black patch with a white skeleton holding a scythe. Below it, one word in bold letters, Reaper. The officer, whose name was, spoke in broken English. "What is this? What is Reaper?" Was bleeding from a dozen wounds. His ribs were broken, his team was dead, but he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You'll find out," said. Stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked away. The lights in cell dimmed. He was alone now, prisoner on an alien ship, surrounded by enemies. Most men would have despaired. Most men would have given up. But was not most men. He was a Reaper. He sat in the darkness and started to count. Count the seconds between guard patrols. Count the sounds of the ship around him. Count his own heartbeats. He was gathering information, building a picture of his prison in his mind. They thought they had captured him. They thought they had won. They were wrong. The word Reaper would mean nothing to them now, just letters on a patch. But soon, very soon, they would understand. They would learn what it meant when humans painted death on their uniforms. They would learn why Earth's warriors took pride in that dark name. Sat in his cell and waited, patient, calm, deadly. The Reaper had come to their ship, and Reapers only had one job. Harvest. 3 days had passed since they brought aboard the flagship, the Crimson Talon. 3 days of questions, 3 days of pain, 3 days of learning absolutely nothing. Commander sat in his office, staring at reports that made no sense. The humans should have broken by now. Their neural scanners could crack open any mind like an egg. They had used them on warriors from 100 different species. All of them talked eventually. All of them gave up their secrets. But not this one, not. Every time they put him in the scanner, every time they tried to pull information from his brain, they hit a wall. The human just sat there, strapped to the chair, and recited the same 3 things over and over. Lieutenant Commander, Service Number 48279634 TK, Earth Defense Coalition, Navy SEALs. Nothing else. No tactical data, no intelligence about human military strength, no information about Earth's defenses, just name, rank, and number, again and again and again. Found it disturbing. The human's mind should be breaking. Instead, it seemed to be getting stronger, as if the pain made him more focused, not less, as if suffering was something he'd trained for. The commander looked down at the patch on his desk. The Reaper patch. That word kept bothering him. What did it mean? Why did this one human wear it with such obvious pride? He called for his science officer, a thin named who specialized in alien languages and cultures. Arrived quickly, his data pad already glowing with information. "You wanted to see me, Commander." "Yes, I need you to research something for me," held up the patch. "This word, Reaper, find out what it means to humans, find out why it matters." Took the patch carefully, studying it with his large eyes. "Shall I access the human data we captured from their ship?" "Access everything. Their computers, their networks, their history files, everything we took from their vessels. I want to know what this word means." Nodded and left, sat back in his chair, troubled. Something about this human bothered him deeply. The Empire had conquered over 200 species. Some fought hard, some surrendered easily, but they all followed predictable patterns. Humans didn't. They were new to space, barely a century into their expansion beyond their home system. They should be weak, confused, easy to dominate. But when looked at, he saw something else entirely. He saw a predator. He saw something that had evolved to kill. Down in the detention level sat in his cell. His body was covered in bruises and burns from the interrogation sessions. His ribs ached with every breath. But his mind was clear, focused. He had been counting. The guards rotated every 6 hours. There were always 2 of them. They carried plasma rifles, Type 7 by the look of them. The door to his cell used a magnetic lock system tied to the ship's main power grid. The corridor outside had cameras every 15 meters. He was building a map in his mind, every detail of his prison, every weakness, every opportunity. They thought they were breaking him with their torture. They didn't understand that pain was just another form of information. It told him about their technology, their methods, their limitations. SEALs trained for this. They trained to resist torture that would destroy normal people. They trained to turn every situation into an advantage, had gone through hell week. He had survived training that broke most candidates. This was just another test. And he was passing. Meanwhile, worked through the night in his lab. The human data was vast, overwhelming. He started with simple definitions and found the word quickly enough. Reaper. In human mythology, it was the personification of death. A skeleton in a black robe carrying a scythe to harvest souls. Death, they called their elite warrior Death. Dug deeper, he found military records. The humans had entire units that used the Reaper symbol, special operations forces, the most elite warriors in their military, the ones sent on the hardest missions, the ones who almost never failed. He found combat footage, humans fighting humans in wars that stretched back thousands of years. The violence was shocking, brutal, continuous. These creatures had been killing each other since they climbed down from trees. They had perfected warfare over 10,000 years of constant practice. Watched video of human soldiers in combat. They fought with an intensity that seemed insane. They charged into gunfire. They held positions against impossible odds. They died in droves, and the ones who survived just kept fighting harder. He found casualty statistics that made his blood run cold. Human warriors, especially these Reapers, killed at ratios that should be impossible. 1 human against 10 enemies, 1 against 20, sometimes 1 against 50, and the humans won. Discovered something else. Humans came from a death world. Their planet was categorized as extremely hostile to life. Constant natural disasters, massive predators, diseases that killed millions. Humans had survived by becoming the most dangerous thing on their own planet. They had driven multiple species extinct through hunting. They had reshaped their entire world to suit themselves. And now they were in space. Compiled his report and brought it to Commander. The commander read it in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. "This cannot be accurate," said finally. "I checked it 3 times, sir. The data all comes from human sources, their own records." Stood and walked to the window. Outside, space stretched in all directions. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there were billions more of these creatures, these Reapers. "They call their planet Earth," continued. "It means dirt, ground. They named their world after soil. So, sir, they have over 100 different words for ways to kill someone. Their language is built around death and survival. But they only have 1 word for their planet, and it means dirt." Understood. These creatures cared more about death than they did about their own home. They were obsessed with killing. It was woven into their culture, their language, their very being. "What else?" asked. "They developed nuclear weapons, bombs that could destroy entire cities. They used them twice, saw the horror they caused, and then chose to never use them again. They built thousands of these weapons and just stopped." Turned to face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that humans have the capacity for unlimited destruction paired with the discipline to restrain themselves. They are apex predators who have learned self-control. They can kill on a scale we can barely imagine, but they choose not to. Until we push them." "Until we push them, yes, sir." Walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. He thought about, sitting in his cell, broken in body but unbroken in spirit. He thought about the word Reaper and what it truly meant. "I need to speak with Fleet Admiral," said. "We need to release this human. We need to avoid conflict with his species." "Sir, the Admiral won't listen. We've conquered 200 species. One human. One human killed 17 of our best soldiers. One human has resisted every interrogation method we have. One human wears death on his uniform like a medal." Looked at his science officer. "What happens when there are millions of them? Billions?" Had no answer. In his cell, smiled in the darkness. He had finished counting. He knew everything he needed to know. Soon, very soon, they would learn what Reaper meant. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Coalition ship, staring at the tactical display. 3 human ships faced an entire fleet. 37 enemy vessels against 3 of theirs. The odds were not good. But the odds had never stopped humans before. "Admiral, we've confirmed Reaper One's last known position," her tactical officer reported. "He's aboard the flagship, the Crimson Talon." Nodded slowly. Was alive. The emergency beacon had transmitted just enough data before dying. He was captured, deep in enemy territory, surrounded by aliens who would love to crack open his skull and learn Earth's secrets. She couldn't leave him there. But she also couldn't throw away 3 ships and 1,500 crew members on a rescue mission that would probably fail. She needed another option. That option walked onto the bridge at that moment. Dr. Lee was a civilian, who had been studying alien cultures for the past decade. She was small, barely over 5 feet tall, with short black hair and determined eyes. Admiral said, "I have an idea." "I'm listening." Moved to the display and pulled up data on psychology and culture. They respect strength, but they also respect intelligence. They collect scientists and scholars from the species they conquer. If I could pose as a refugee, a scientist fleeing from human territory, they might take me in. And then what? Then I make contact with Commander. I help him escape. Studied the young woman, had no military training, no combat experience. She was a scientist, not a soldier, but there was steel in her eyes, determination. The same look had seen in Special Forces operators before dangerous missions. "This is suicide," said bluntly. "So is leaving him there." Met the Admiral's eyes without flinching. "I know the risks, but I also know that we don't abandon our people, fought for us. Now it's my turn to fight for him." Was quiet for a long moment, then she nodded. "All right, we'll set it up, but Dr. Lee understands something. If this goes wrong, I can't help you. You'll be on your own." "I understand." They prepared cover story carefully. She would be a scientist who disagreed with Earth's military expansion. She would claim to have valuable information about human biology and technology. She would seek asylum with the, offering her knowledge in exchange for protection. It was thin, but it might work. They put her in an escape pod and launched it toward space, making it look like she had fled from the human fleet. Then they waited. They picked her up within hours. They brought her aboard a patrol ship and questioned her extensively. Played her part perfectly, acting nervous and scared, offering just enough information to seem valuable without giving away anything important. They believed her, or at least they wanted the information she promised. They transferred her to the Crimson Talon for further debriefing. Walked through the massive alien ship, trying to memorize every detail. Guard positions, corridor layouts, security checkpoints. She had one thing hidden in her body, surgically implanted before the mission. A quantum communicator, small enough to fit under her skin, powerful enough to send short-range messages. She had to find. For 3 days she played the cooperative refugee, answering questions, providing data that sounded useful but wasn't. They grew to trust her. They gave her limited freedom to move around certain sections of the ship. On the 4th day, she found the detention level. She convinced a guard that she needed to see the human prisoner for her research. The guard, bored and not particularly bright, let her pass. Sat in his cell, meditating. He heard footsteps and opened his eyes. A human woman stood outside his energy barrier, pretending to scan him with a device. Lips barely moved. "Commander, I'm Dr. Lee. Earth Defense Coalition sent me to help you escape." Showed no reaction on his face, but his eyes flickered with understanding. "How?" "I have a communicator. We can coordinate with the fleet, but I need your help. I need to know the ship's layout." "Engineering deck level 7. That's the weak point. If you can overload the reactors there, it will cause a cascade failure throughout the ship. Life support, gravity, weapons, everything will go down. That will kill everyone on board. Including us, probably." His voice was calm, matter-of-fact, but it gives the fleet a chance, and it completes the mission. Stared at him. This man was willing to die to finish the job. She thought about Jun Park and Myra Song, who had died alongside him on that moon. She thought about what had already sacrificed. "There might be another way," she said quietly. "If I can get to engineering and trigger a controlled overload, it might just disable systems without destroying the ship. Enough chaos for you to escape. And then you fight your way to the weapons control. You're a SEAL. I've read your file. You've done harder missions than this." Almost smiled, almost. "All right, when?" "I need 2 days to prepare. Can you last that long?" "I can last as long as it takes." Left before the guard grew suspicious. That night she used her quantum communicator to contact Admiral. The message was brief, encrypted, nearly impossible to detect. "Package located, plan in motion, stand by for signal." Aboard received the message. She ordered her fleet to move into position, staying just outside sensor range. They would wait for signal, then they would strike. Meanwhile, Commander finally got his meeting with Fleet Admiral. She was a tall with silver armor and cold eyes. She listened to his report about humans with growing irritation. "You're telling me we should fear one species because they have a violent history," said. "Commander, we've conquered 200 species. Many of them had violent pasts." "Admiral, you don't understand. Humans are different, they." "Enough," stood. "This human, this Reaper, has killed some of our soldiers. I acknowledge that, but we are the Empire. We do not run from primitives who just learn to travel between stars. We break them, we conquer them, and we add them to our empire." "Admiral, I strongly advise." "Your advice is noted and rejected. We will extract information from this human. We will learn their weaknesses, and then we will take their planet. Move to the window. Send a message to the High Command. Tell them to prepare an invasion fleet. We're going to Earth." Left the meeting feeling sick. He had tried to warn them, but pride was a dangerous thing. They had conquered so many species that they thought themselves invincible. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In her quarters, prepared for what came next, she had located the engineering deck. She had studied the reactor systems. She knew what needed to be done. In his cell, flexed his hands. His body was healing. SEALs healed fast, trained to recover from injury quicker than normal people. He had been doing exercises in his cell, staying ready, staying sharp. He had fashioned a weapon from pieces of his cell, a sharp edge made from a broken piece of the energy barrier housing. It wasn't much, but in the hands of a trained killer, anything could be a weapon. 2 days later, everything was ready. Sent the signal to Admiral. Then she walked calmly toward engineering deck, her heart pounding in her chest. The Reaper was about to be unleashed, and they were about to understand what that word truly meant. Lee walked through the corridors of the Crimson Talon with steady steps. Inside, her heart was racing. Outside, she looked calm. She had learned that from watching, control, discipline. Even when fear screamed at you to run, you walked forward. Engineering Deck 7 was restricted, but her security clearance as a valuable refugee scientist got her through the first checkpoint. She smiled at the guards, carrying a data pad like she belonged there. They waved her through. The engineering bay was massive. 3 primary reactors hummed with power, each one feeding energy to different ship systems. Engineers worked at control stations, monitoring power flow and efficiency. None of them paid attention to the small human woman walking among them. Found a terminal in a quiet corner. Her hands moved across the alien controls. She had studied their systems for days, learning how they worked. The used fusion reactors, similar to Earth's but more advanced, more powerful, more unstable if you knew where to push. She began entering commands, override codes, safety disables, power redirects. The changes were small enough that the main monitoring systems didn't flag them immediately, but they were adding up, pressure building, heat rising. An alarm chimed. One of the engineers looked up, frowning, kept typing. "Hey, what are you doing?" An engineer started toward her. Entered the final command and pressed execute. "Saving my friend." The reactors screamed. Alarms blared throughout engineering. The engineer reached for her, but it was too late. The first reactor overloaded. The explosion was contained by safety fields, but the energy discharge rippled through the power grid like lightning through water. The second reactor went critical, then the third. Closed her eyes. She thought about her family back on Earth. She thought about all the research she would never finish. She thought about sitting in his cell, counting the seconds until freedom. She hoped it was enough. The explosions tore through Engineering Deck 7. The blast killed instantly, along with 15 engineers, but it did exactly what she had planned. The power grid shattered. Emergency systems kicked in across the ship, but they couldn't compensate fast enough. Lights flickered throughout the Crimson Talon. Gravity fluctuated. Doors unlocked as magnetic seals lost power, and in Detention Level 3, cell barrier vanished. He moved immediately. No hesitation. He had been ready for this moment for days. The makeshift blade was in his hand as he stepped into the corridor. 2 guards turned toward him, reaching for weapons. They were too slow. Killed them both in seconds, quick, efficient, silent. He took one of their plasma rifles and checked the charge. 70%, good enough. He took their armor pieces, strapping on whatever fit. Then he started moving. The ship was chaos. Crew members ran in every direction, trying to respond to the emergency. Most of them didn't even see. The ones who did died before they could raise an alarm. He moved through the ship like a ghost, like a reaper. His training kicked in muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice. Close quarters combat was what SEALs excelled at. Tight corridors, limited visibility, confused enemies. This was his environment. A squad of 5 security officers rushed around a corner, dropped 3 with the rifle before they could aim. He killed the 4th with his blade. The 5th managed to fire but had already moved. The plasma bolt scorched the wall where he had been standing. His return shot was perfect. Commander heard the reports coming in. A human prisoner had escaped. Guards were dying. The human was loose in the ship, killing everything in his path. "Mobilize all security teams," ordered. "Find him, stop him." "Sir, we're trying. He's moving too fast. He knows the ship layout somehow." He counted, said quietly. In his cell, he was counting, learning, planning. He grabbed his weapon. "I'm going down there. Send all teams to detention level." Led a squad of 20 elite soldiers toward the last known position of the human. They moved in formation, weapons ready, scanning every corner. They found bodies. Soldiers, torn apart with brutal efficiency. 57 dead in 23 minutes. "Where is he?" one of the soldiers whispered. "He's hunting us," realized with horror. "He's not trying to escape, he's hunting us." A plasma bolt came from above. One of soldiers fell. They looked up. Crouched in the ceiling access shaft, rifle aimed down at them. He fired twice more before disappearing back into the shaft. "After him," shouted. But when they reached the access point, was gone. He had moved through the ventilation system, popping out behind them. 3 more soldiers died before they even knew he was there. Ordered his remaining troops to fall back. They retreated in good order, covering each other, but followed, patient, deadly, picking them off one by one. Outside the ship, Admiral's fleet attacked. 3 human ships against 37 vessels. The odds were insane, but humans had fought against insane odds before. The human ships used tactics they had never seen. Kamikaze drones that exploded against shields. EMP bursts that scrambled sensors. Close-range maneuvers that seemed suicidal but worked. The human captains fought like fought, with aggression and creativity and absolute refusal to quit. The expected conventional warfare, formations, predictable patterns. Instead, they got chaos. Human ships dove through their formations, weapons blazing. They rammed damaged vessels. They used debris as cover and enemy ships as shields. Aboard the Crimson Talon, reached the command deck. The ship's bridge was protected by heavy doors and multiple security checkpoints, but with the power grid damaged, those protections were weak. He placed explosive charges he had taken from the armory. The blast blew open the bridge doors, stepped through the smoke, rifle ready. Fleet Admiral stood in the center of the bridge. She held a plasma blade, the weapon of honor guards. Around her, bridge officers scrambled for weapons. Human said, "You will die here." Said nothing, he just moved forward. Was fast, faster than most. She swung the blade in a deadly arc, but had fought faster opponents. He had trained against the best fighters Earth could produce. He the blade and fired. Dodged, moving with surprising grace. The plasma blade came around again, blocked with his rifle, the blade cutting through the weapon's barrel. He dropped the ruined gun and drew his makeshift blade. They fought hand to hand, had reach and strength, had skill and experience. The fight was brief, brutal, final. Stood over his body and moved to the weapon's console. His fingers flew across the controls. Years ago, he had been trained to hack enemy systems. This one was damaged, security compromised. It took him 30 seconds to gain access. He activated the ship's communication array and transmitted directly to the human fleet. Shield frequencies, tactical formations, weapons signatures, everything they needed. Then he turned the Crimson Talon's weapons on its own fleet. The massive flagship's guns blazed to life, firing on the ships around it. Confusion rippled through the enemy formation. Their flagship was attacking them. What was happening? Admiral saw the opportunity and took it. All ships push forward, hit them now while they're confused. The human fleet charged into the broken formation. With the shield frequencies from, their weapons punched through defenses like they weren't there. Ships exploded. Others tried to retreat, only to be caught by the Crimson Talon's guns. The battle became a rout. Commander reached the bridge and saw the carnage. Admiral dead, bridge crew dead, and standing in the middle of it all, covered in blood, was. Raised his weapon, then he lowered it. "You won," he said simply. Looked at him. "Tell your people what happened here. Tell them what one human did. Tell them what happens when you take our people." Nodded slowly. He understood now. The word Reaper wasn't just a name, it was a promise. Activated the communication system one more time. Reaper 1 to Earth Fleet. Objective secured. Didn't make it. Admiral's voice came through, thick with emotion. "Copy that, Reaper 1. You did good. Come home." The fleet broke and ran. The human ships let them go, too damaged to pursue. But the message had been sent. Stood alone on the bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his enemies, and felt nothing but emptiness. Another mission complete. Another price paid. 3 months had passed since the battle. 3 months since turned the flagship into a weapon against its own fleet. 3 months since Dr. Lee gave her life to free him. The Empire was in chaos. On there, far from Earth, the ruling council sat in emergency session. The chamber was filled with hundreds of leaders, all arguing at once. Fleet Admiral was dead. The Seventh Fleet was destroyed. And worst of all, the battle footage had leaked. Every species in the galaxy had seen it now. They had watched one human tear through an entire starship. They had watched 3 human vessels defeat a fleet. The impossible had happened, and everyone knew it. Commander, now promoted to Admiral due to being the highest-ranking survivor, stood before the council. He had been there that day. He had seen what could do. Now he had to make them understand. The human called himself Reaper, said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. I asked him what it meant. He said I would find out. Now we all know. He pulled up data on the main display. Human history scrolled past. Wars, battles, endless conflicts spanning 10,000 years. The council members watched in growing horror. Humans evolved on a death world, continued. A planet that tried to kill them every single day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters. They survived by becoming the most dangerous thing on their world. They hunted massive predators to extinction. They turned their entire planet into a garden designed to feed themselves. More data appeared. Human weapons, human tactics, human achievements. They split the atom and created weapons that could destroy cities. They used them twice, saw the horror they caused, and then chose restraint. They built thousands of these weapons and simply stopped using them. They have the capacity for unlimited destruction paired with the discipline to control it. A council member stood. But they are primitives, new to space. We have conquered 200 species. Yes, said quietly. And how many of those species had words for over 100 different ways to kill? How many of them named their elite warriors after death itself? How many of them considered warfare to be a science they perfected over? Silence. The human didn't just escape, said. He hunted us, on our own ship, in our own territory. He killed 93 soldiers and took control of our flagship. One human, alone, injured, without weapons or armor. And he won. The council chambers erupted in argument. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to pretend it never happened. But's voice cut through the noise. I propose we leave human space alone. We offer reparations for their dead. We acknowledge them as a protected species. Because if we don't, they will come for us. And when they do, they won't come with one seal. They'll come with millions of them. The vote was called. It passed unanimously. The Empire would avoid human space. They would pay for their mistake. They would remember the word Reaper. Other species watched and learned. The galactic community had seen what happened when you underestimated humans. Within weeks, humanity went from being a curiosity to being a power everyone respected and feared. On Earth, in a small cemetery outside Seattle, stood in the rain. Before him were 3 graves: Corporal Myra Song, Sergeant Jun Park, Dr. Lee, his team, his friend, his savior. He knelt and placed his Reaper patch on's grave. She had earned it more than anyone. She wasn't a soldier, but she had fought like one. She had given everything to complete the mission. Thank you, said quietly. You brought me home. Admiral stood nearby, giving him space. When finally stood and walked over, she handed him a data pad. The sent this, official communication, they're calling for peace talks. Read it without expression, they're scared. Yes, the entire galaxy is scared. Looked at him. You know what this means. Humanity just became a major power because of what you did. Because of what we all did, corrected. Myra and Jun started it, finished it. I was just the weapon. You're being reassigned, said. Earth Defense Coalition wants to create a new special operations unit. Elite warriors trained to operate in hostile alien environments. They want you to lead it. Looked back at the graves. What are they calling it? Task Force Reaper. He almost smiled. Of course they were. The word had power now. It meant something to the galaxy, fear, respect, a warning. I'll do it, said, but I want to choose my people, and I want Lee's name on every ship we deploy. She deserves to be remembered. Done. 1 month later, Admiral stood before the United Earth Assembly. Representatives from every nation watched as she gave her report. "We didn't seek this conflict," said. "We came to the stars hopping for peace. We wanted to meet other species as friends, but the galaxy tested us. They captured one of our people. They tried to break him. They failed." She pulled up footage of on the ship. The representatives watched in silence as one human became a force of nature. "Now the galaxy knows what we've always known," continued. "Humanity doesn't start fights. We finish them. We don't seek war, but we excel at it. We have turned survival into an art form and warfare into a science." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The Empire has sued for peace. 43 other species have sent diplomatic missions to Earth. They want trade agreements, defense pacts, cultural exchanges. They want to be our friends because they're too afraid to be our enemies." A representative stood. "What happens now, Admiral?" "Now we build," said. "We build ships. We build alliances. We build a future where the word Reaper means protection, not destruction. Where other species know that if they threaten humanity, they face the harvest." The Assembly approved her proposals. Earth began constructing a new class of warships, heavy assault carriers designed for long-range operations. Each ship would carry a special operations team. Each team would be trained to standards. The lead ship launched 6 months later. It was massive, painted dark gray with human and alien languages covering its hull. One message repeated in every language: "We are the Reapers. Test us at your peril." The ship was named EverythingSci-Fi. On the bridge, Captain stood at attention as the ship left Earth orbit. His new team stood with him. 50 of the best operators humanity could produce. All of them volunteers. All of them ready to die for the mission. "Captain," his executive officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from space." "Put it through." Commander's face appeared on the screen. The Admiral looked older now, tired. "Captain," said, "I wanted to speak with you before your ship deploys." "I'm listening." "I asked you once what Reaper meant. You told me I would find out." Paused. "I know now. It means that death walks among the stars, wearing human faces. It means that your species has taken mortality itself and made it a weapon." "It means we protect our own," said, "and we don't forget our dead." "I understand. Captain, I hope our species never fight again. I have seen what one of you can do. I don't want to see what millions can do." "Then stay peaceful, Admiral. Keep your word. Remember what happened." "We will. I write about it every day in my logs. So future generations remember. So they never make our mistake." Looked directly at. "Some lessons can only be taught in blood. The learned that lesson. Thank you for letting any of us survive to remember it." The transmission ended. Turned to his crew. "Set course for the frontier. We have work to do." The EDCS jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading into the unknown. Aboard, 50 Reapers waited for whatever came next, ready to fight, ready to die, ready to show the galaxy what humanity could do. On Earth, in that small cemetery in Seattle, rain fell on 3 graves. The Reaper patch on Lee's headstone was already fading from weather, but the words beneath it would last forever. "Dr. Lee, civilian hero, Reaper." She had gone into darkness unarmed and unafraid. She had given everything to save a friend. She had shown the galaxy that you didn't need to be a soldier to be a warrior. The word Reaper spread across the stars. Other species told stories about it, about humans who refused to break, about warriors who turned death into a calling, about a species that survived by becoming what killed them. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, and the galaxy would never forget. The harvest had begun.